Hey, it's so nice to be here with you. I am sitting in Edinburgh, in Scotland, looking out at the castle, which is on a volcano, as you probably know. And there is a sense of kind of, albeit quite antique, volcanic energy. You can still feel it, a power spot. And we have no less than 23 countries, people from 23 different countries around the world here. And some really exotic ones like Antigua and Barbuda, Uzbekistan, Namibia, Thailand, Uruguay, Bosnia. There's like, wow, this is magnificent. So welcome to everybody. I've got that tingling feeling on the cheeks that you get at times like this. My human family, my sisters and my brothers, welcome. The theme of this one came about because we messed up the sound on one of the satsangs a few months ago, as I recall, in weeks actually, and promised to do a reprise of it. And the theme of it was resolving, conflict, having conversations with people to resolve conflict, um, and having the confidence to do that. I mean, I have to say, if I was going to pick a theme for it today, it wouldn't be that, because I've not really been thinking about that. But it's an interesting one, and I'll come back to that in a second. What I've been focusing on for the last few months, in fact, is this whole business of manifesting, and why I find it interesting, because it's not, the Taoist approach to it is not coming from a greedy, graspy, spiritual, materialistic, come on, let's get this and let's get that, but let's do it in this kind of new metaphysical way rather than having to work for it, and so on. And it's not even about the buzz of kind of making things happen suddenly and getting loads of money or this or that and going, wow, look, I just made, it's nothing to do with that. It's actually really because we are always manifesting things, whether we realize it or not. We are negotiating our way through the great thoroughfare, as the Taoists used to call it, this incredible experience of being alive. And there seems to be, well, at least two clear ways of going about that. One is the way of striving and the kind of rationalistic way. And that works, it works. I have friends who do incredibly well by just being focused on making money, and they're really good at it, and that works for them, if money is what you want. But then that doesn't necessarily give you the full experience of being a human being. And that's what interests me, and that is what interested the Taoist sages, and that's why I'm into Taoism in the first place. How do we optimize on this experience of being alive, this unfathomably magnificent gift, the greatest gift there is? And it's taken me, like, well, I've been doing it for 49 years, I think more. I don't know, like, well, a long time. I'm 61. I've been doing this stuff since I was 11, in fact. And obviously, kind of got really into it later. I mean, from the age of, say, 19 or so, getting into it with more and more earnestness. And the Taoist magic part of it, which is what Taoism was known for, which is what attracted me as a young hippie in the late 60s in London. Taoism was considered to be part of the hippie pantheon. Just about, mostly it was Indian stuff, and kind of the more exotic, colourful aspects of Indian metaphysics, and a little bit of Tibetan. The Chinese wasn't quite as colourful or exotic looking, but it appealed to me. And the one thing that stood out that it was known for was Taoist magic. And I actually went to Hong Kong at 19 to study Taoist magic, and through the magic met a magician, and I'm making light of it. But it did actually start off the whole process for me, and it's been really fascinating. I extrapolated from the bizarre rituals that he engaged in, the basic principles by which the whole system works. And this took until now, really, to get clarity on it. I wrote a fairly best-selling book about it in 2003 called Manifesto. And I didn't really have time at that point to really go into the conversation with myself about what I really felt about it all. It was just one of those things. I was busy at the time, and I had to write the book and hand it in 3 weeks. And so I used the system, the magic, to write it without noticing it, and it worked. excuse me, but it made me a conversation itself. So about, I don't know, a few months ago, it started coming through clear and clear. You've got to have that conversation properly now. You owe it to both yourself and everybody to look at what the principles really are about manifesting. And so that's my interest at the moment. I just did a magnificent session in Glasgow yesterday. It really was really hugely moving, and another one in Bath a couple of nights earlier. And there's something very powerful about all of this and where it all is for me at the moment and the way it seems to be touching people. And I put together an online course, you probably know anyway, a new manifesto. It took months to put together. And so this is my inquiry, and I feel it has a resonance for everybody. The point about the Taoist system is that it's all about optimizing who you are by understanding what you are, and optimizing your experience of reality by understanding what that is. And the process, I mean, in fact, this is what I really want to say. There are these different hooks to attract our interest, because we all are primarily, I think we operate quite superficially. You know, we're attracted by things that glitter. So, you know, there are various things that draw people's attention, as we know: money, sex, power, and the obvious ones like that. And what Taoist teachers, the ones that I've respected through the millennia, in fact, have always done is use these hooks, so to speak, to gain people's interest. And then once you get involved in it, you realize very quickly that it really isn't about getting those things. It's about developing yourself fully. And then those things, or whatever you need to keep you going, will just come quite naturally by themselves anyway. So really, this is a profound, I hesitate using the word spiritual because I find it kind of lazy. It's really hard to define what does it mean spiritual, but let's say metaphysical. It's a really profound metaphysical process. And all the books that I've written, 17 of them, they were based on that, coming up with things that people are interested in. So, you know, just how to survive in a difficult world was the first one. That was Handbook for the Urban Warrior. This is not a plug, by the way, I'm just talking. The second one was Handbook for Heroes, which was about how to get fame and fortune. The third one was Handbook for Modern Lovers, which I actually wrote because I love the title, inspired by Jonathan Richmond and the Modern Lovers. They did Egyptian reggae. I don't know if you remember that. You're probably not that old. And that was a book about Taoist sexology. And then it went on from there, and there was Manifesto, and there were all kinds of stuff that I did. And all of them really are just to draw you into the system itself. And that's what I find so fascinating about it. You think you're kind of interested in something superficial, you go there, and then it draws you into the depths of the metaphysical process. And that's where my interest really lies at the moment. So I'm not even that interested personally in manifesting stuff. It's not what kind of I'm thinking about in itself. I'm interested in the relationship I have with the Tao and the relationship I have with the Tao in you and within everybody, and how collectively somehow we can optimize this experience of being together on the planet while we still have one to be on together. And it's interesting, though, that the topic given to me by my former self a few weeks ago was this, how to resolve difficult conversations, you know, having the confidence to do that, because it's a good example of manifesting. So the other night, I will get to the meditation soon. If you've never been to one of these before, I need to talk a while to kind of loosen myself up into the right atmosphere before I can kind of close my eyes and start channeling, as it were. Because I don't plan these things, I don't write notes, I don't have any preconceived idea of where it's going to go. I could do that, it would be more efficient, but then I think it would deprive you of a genuine experience. And I was thinking about the topic lightly. It's not something I've been thinking about a lot. Unfortunately, I've not been required to resolve any particularly difficult conversations lately. But a couple of nights ago, between Bath and getting to the airport to fly up to Glasgow, I went to visit my ex-father-in-law because my youngest son, who's been living in America for a while, he's a DJ and a producer over there, has been over in London in England visiting, and he was down with his grandfather, and I am really close friends with my ex-father-in-law. His name's Roy. I just want to tell you a little bit about him. He's a beautiful man. He's 92 now. I met him when he was 65, and he was in the RAF. He came from a very, very humble background, brought up by his grandparents who were Italian immigrants, who were evidently people of really good character, because he's just one of those people that is just imbued with good character. You know, they shine out, those ones. And he was in the RAF. He flew Lancaster bombers in the Second World War, which meant that they used to do these uh, forays into over, but you know, they used to fly over Berlin. It was I think it was about 10 or 12 hours there and back, and it was really, really dangerous. I mean, I've heard some of the stories of it, and the close misses, and the amount of people that he knew that died, that you know never came back, and all of that. It was quite poignant. You know, you hear all these stories. And they used to give them speed. He didn't even know what it was at the time. They used to give them these pills that made them feel a bit nervy and jangly and kept them awake. And it was speed. They didn't tell them that. And came out of the Air Force, probably relatively traumatized. Not as much as he would have if he'd have been in the army, as we know. It was like the luxury end of it all, being in the RAF. And had no money and went to work for a builder, and cut a long story short, became, over a period of not too long, a multi-millionaire in the days when being a millionaire was really something. That we hadn't invented billionaires or multi-billionaires yet. And did it, and I know this, he did it in an incredibly humble, unarrogant, unconceited, unpushy way. He's an amazingly modest man, a real English gem. And he got into Krishnamurti and into meditation in quite a big way, psychotherapy and what have you, in the 60s, because of his feelings of unease from having been in the war and, you know, all the stuff that people go through. So when I met him, it was when I met his daughter, Claire, who was my second wife. We were quite different, to say the least. This was in the early 80s. I mean, I was a totally alternative kind of character. I'd just come back from New Mexico, where I'd been living with the Native Americans for 4 years, and completely into the Taoist thing and Tai Chi and Chinese boxing and all kinds of weird things, according, you know, as far as he'd be concerned. And we used to have these amazing conversations that went on for hours and hours and hours and hours. And when I got divorced from Claire, which, you know, relative compared to most divorces, was about as civilized and congenial as I suppose you could get. But nonetheless, I don't know if you've ever been divorced, but it's not easy to get divorced. You know, there's always going to be kind of, you know, it's a strange patch you've got to go through there before you can become, feel easy with each other again. She's an incredible sport, and that's the main reason, I suppose, because I mean, I'm always willing to be friends with anybody. But I had left her, and so it was his daughter who he really loved, and it was difficult. We had to have quite a few really, really difficult conversations because we've been really honest with each other always. I mean, I'd often stand up at the dinner table when it was like one of the massive Georgian country house Sunday lunchtime, and I suddenly get up off the table and get. In those days, I was in my 30s. I had this thing about being brutally honest to everybody all the time. I didn't believe in diplomacy or tact in any way at all, and I just stand up and say the most outrageous things. Actually, I think that a lot of them were true, and that's why we didn't fall out. But it was really like a powerfully honest, bizarre relationship of this kind of North London ex kind of street hippie loony guy, and who lived with the Native Americans, done all this kind of unusual stuff with a relatively conventional, highly conventional, staid really English family, and but through this, a great mutual respect grew. So when it came to these times where I had to discuss everything with him, and it was really difficult, really, really hard. And the fears that would come up of being judged substandard, or you know, a scoundrel, or you know, the things that you naturally feel, and also the terrible fear that I would lose the connection somehow with my boy, and So, you know, there's a lot at stake at those times, and then there was all the financial stuff we had to go through, and you know how it is, and maybe you don't, it's not easy. And I remember through that process, I was much less advanced in all this practice then, but nonetheless, I remember I was telling you about principles, the various principles of coming, situating yourself properly in your body, which we're going to get into shortly when we do the meditation, and knowing what is true for you, like just knowing beyond all the conditioning, beyond all the considerations about what they will think of you, and whether you're going to be judged as being a bad guy. And that's a big one, isn't it? We don't want to be seen as being bad. That's one of the main driving forces of humanity, is being seen to be good. That's one of the things that drives society. But at times of crisis, something that pushes you back behind all that. You're required to speak from your deepest truth. And those really weirdly difficult, scratchy, squirmy situations where you've got to face somebody that you've developed trust with, that you've now somehow potentially betrayed, and make it good with them, knowing it's not going to happen all at once. It's going to take time. And the fact that I am now, and have been for decades, close friends with him, we actually got closer, and with her as well. I mean, she's one of my closest people in the world, and her husband as well. I'm really close friends with them. We sit when we're together, and I got like my arms around him, and I had one at Roy's 90. I had one arm around her husband, one arm around Roy, and looking at my ex-wife with my son, and just saying, I remember saying, wow, this is amazing. And everybody laughed. It's beautiful to be here with you, to be family like this, despite all the possible friction that could be. I think we all deserve a great round of applause. And it's, in fact, I do consider it one of my greatest successes. Now that's manifesting, excuse me, because I remember through all the fears that I had, which I saw as like a mountain of obstacles before me, by using the technique of jumping over that mountain range in my mind, landing on the other side, having cleared it all, you know, in my mind, with the intention that everything would be all right, that we'd all be friends, that everything would somehow work, because I so wanted it for my son as well. I didn't want him to be in a fractured reality. He didn't deserve it. He was too special for that, and for me anyway. And it worked. It worked. And so that when I went to see him, I'm hanging out with Roy the other Friday evening, and he's old now. He's 92, and he's kind of a little bit frail now. He's still very handsome. He's a little stooped, and he's not really eating enough because he lives on his own. Looks after himself very well, but you know he's 92, and there's that poignancy of someone that you love that you know is not going to be around that much longer. And we have such an amazing close relationship, and it was so beautiful to be with them. And coming away, I thought, yeah, you know, that's an example of having resolved a difficult conversation, to say the least, through having the confidence, not even in myself as a constructed fictional being called Stephen, but in the Tao, in the great way that makes it all roll. And then I take this out to humanity at large, and I see all the amount of conflict that is going on in the world, the propensity for people to get lost in the conflictual mode, rather than to relax and roll into a state of harmony, of mutual harmony, and the potential for the awfully destructive forces that can be unleashed if we don't develop more cohesion as a global society. And I see that it is I feel it in my responsibility, and I feel it's a collective responsibility to address ourselves to the whole of human society, and to take responsibility, each of us and collectively, for resolving the conflicted state that we might fall into, or that is there, but you know, to somehow ameliorate that and bring a greater harmony for everybody. And this altruism is something that develops through the Taoist practice, and it's not about being a nice guy or being kind or trying to be good because you think you should, or because you're going to earn points for it in some way. It becomes instinctual to want to take care of your sisters and your brothers, to put your arms around everybody. And it doesn't mean you've got to like everybody, everybody's going to like you. It won't happen that way. But that you acknowledge and embrace everyone as family without exception, including the people that are acting out in ways that you find utterly abhorrent. And that's where the magic comes in. That's where the intercession on the metaphysical level seems to have effect. And in fact, I know it has effect. I've seen it. And there's these interesting little moments of proof on at the end of every practice I do each morning, the Qigong, the martial arts, meditation. I make myself remember. It doesn't come naturally. I make myself remember at the end of it all to do a Qigong pass that brings the Qi down to a calm level for everybody. And I've noticed on the days that I do it with real power, like really feeling it, it's as if I'm bringing all the fizz down and it's all settling. There'll invariably, within 2 or 3 days of that, be an incredibly positive piece of news, world news, to somehow like indicate, yeah, you know, this is working. There's something in this. There seems to be some relationship between the action and the effect that I'm seeing. Of course, it's all subjective. This also then brings up the whole conversation about manifesting in the first place, which is that nobody really knows if we manifest anything, because nobody really knows how any of this thing works. I mean, there are people who kind of shout about it, say, yeah, it works like this or it works like that. We know it's this or it's that. It's this law or that law, so on and so forth. But nobody does really know. Anyone who really claims to 100% is lying, because it's not possible to know. It's just too complex. But so, in other words, we don't know whether we're just being prescient. I would have been tuning in to a process that's occurring at some psychic level and responding to that, as in, you know, geopolitical process, and responding to that by adding my wish for it to be, you know, a good result for everybody. Then that good result occurs. And if I say I manifested that, or was party to manifesting that, that probably is only half the truth, if that. The rest of it is that I was tuning into that whole thing that was going on as well. So it's this, it seems to be a combination of destiny, which is a result of everything that's ever happened since the Big Bang, if there was a Big Bang, inevitably turning out like this. It was only ever going to be as it is, and it will only ever be as it's going to be. There's that sense of it can only be that way. And yet, at the same time, we're required to rise up to that and to agree to it, to add our will to it, even if doing so is because we're just being prescient to it and therefore we think we're manifesting. Because if we didn't agree to it, somehow it wouldn't happen. And there is a paradox there that I cannot explain with the intellect, the rational mind, so I'm not even going to try. And it's just leaving it as unknown that's important. That brings a certain humility. And it's the humility that is crucial to, excuse the contradiction here, it's crucial to manifesting. There has to be a humble stance to begin with rather than an arrogant, right, I'm going to do this. Yeah, there has to be, I'm going to do this to trigger you. But then the attitude with which you face the mystery of the great Tao, the subatomic generative force of existence that's informing all of us and all of this, there has to be humility in the face of that. Not because you're revering it, not because you're praying to this thing that's up in the sky above you that's bigger and better than you, but because you are part of this infinite continuum. And it is infinite and it's a continuum, and that's huge. And therefore you as just one part of it surely has to be humble with it. And it does seem that with that humility comes results, come results rather. So that is where my interest is in us manifesting the optimum experience of being alive, each of us individually and collectively, because you can't think seriously about manifesting a beautiful life just for yourself or for the people, and the people that depend on you or that you're associated with. Because if it's a horrible life for the rest of everybody, it's not going to last very long for you. In other words, the more responsibility we each take for making it beautiful for everybody, the more beautiful eventually it's going to be for each of us. It's obvious that. And so implicit in this process is a beautiful altruism. And it's an altruism that seeks no reward. And paradoxically, by seeking no reward, all the rewards required to keep you feeling beautiful will come to you without effort or strain. So that is the essence of the process I want to enact with you, all you people from 23 different countries around the planet right now, because there's enough of us here in our huge numbers to, I think, to create some kind of shift of energy for the better. And anyway, it's fun doing it. It's an experiment. Why not? I don't really know if I have anything more to say about all that, really, just as a setup. I think I've almost got myself in the mode to go into the meditation space. Before I do, let me just explain that the way this Taoist practice works is that we learn to use the body as the arena for experiencing existence at the deepest level, for contacting the Tao. That everything that we can ever touch in the Tao, we can find within our body. And I don't mean in the veins and in the bones, it's not really that. It's within the space of the body. Because co-spatial with the physical body is what the Taoists call your spirit body, the immortal spirit body. It's that aspect of you that always was, is, and will be, which is the space that you go to when your body drops away eventually. And they lay a lot of store in developing an identity with, a relationship with the immortal spirit body, so that when your physical body drops away, and along with that your personality and the character that you've developed in this lifetime, in other words, the identity as the ego, as the human being that walks about and interacts with other human beings, when that all drops away, nothing actually changes. You find yourself, as you've in fact always been, the immortal spirit body. What happens then, I don't know. I don't think it can be described. The Buddhists talk about, the Tibetan Buddhists talk about the 49 days of Bardo, and then what occurs after that. The Taoists never presume to discuss what occurs because it's probably indescribable. It's so intradimensional, interdimensional, that the intellect couldn't grasp it anyway, at least at this stage of our development. So we use the body as the arena to access the spirit body. And then once in the spirit body, that's where we do the magic from. That's where, if we can influence in a benign way the flow of events in the world about us, we do it from that space. And I will now do my very best to conduct an extemporized guided meditation based on all of that, to give you the confidence, and everybody here, the confidence, not in your constructed self, not in the self that you developed since you were, you've been walking around on the planet, but to this deeper part of you, this presence within, which we all have in common, so that whatever difficulties you have coming up in front of you, or perceive that you've got coming in front of you, you're able to negotiate your way through them with the greatest of ease, with a miraculous ease, in fact, and find yourself delivered into a new scenario, free of that, whatever conflict may be facing you, free of whatever difficulties may be facing you, having manifested a reality which is much bigger, more beautiful, and therefore supportive of your biggest self, and so that you're experiencing more of the beauty of being here and therefore able to naturally transmit that to everyone around you, and so we therefore create a wave of evolution for humanity. And if you're ready, I'd say this would be the moment, because I am. Take this time for you now to begin with. Let this be completely and utterly for you in all your magnificent glory. And even if what you think you are isn't magnificent or glorious, bear in mind that that's only an opinion that you constructed and isn't actually the truth, because what you are is an expression of the Tao. You are a manifestation of the Tao. And the Tao is the infinite continuum, and if it's chosen to manifest as you, you've got to be magnificent and glorious, surely. Anything other than that is just an opinion and is, I'd say, spurious and not worth taking any notice of. So this is for you to start with. And let your eyelids lower if it feels comfortable to do that. Let your body sink into the chair that you're sitting on, or if you're lying down, into the floor, or whatever you're lying on. Let yourself make contact with the power in the ground, so you allow yourself to succumb to gravity rather than fighting it. And be aware that coming out of the ground is a power. It's a power that is originating from a kind of thermonuclear power station in the core of this planet, which is creating a heat that's as hot as the surface of the sun itself. And the crust of this earth is, between, 2 and 20 miles or so thick. It's not very thick. And that's what we're on right now. We're on this sphere that is essentially a ball of fire, held up by what seems like solid ground, but relatively speaking, it's not that solid. And that's exciting. This sphere is spinning on its axis at 1,000 miles an hour, and it's simultaneously orbiting the sun at 66,000 miles an hour, which is imponderable, but is true. Yet we feel perfectly still. That's because of the spin, the axial spin. Just to be aware of that is important, and we're going in an easterly direction. And there are 8 billion of us, more or less, on the planet, humans that is, and we're all going about our business in doing different things, some sleeping, some waking, some doing this, some doing that. The whole range of human behavior is going on right now. And yet, incredibly, we're each able to sit in our own space right now and enjoy and appreciate the gift of being alive. In itself, that's quite miraculous amidst all the noise and hubbub. And so as you let your weight sink to meet with the power in the ground, just be aware of that. Honor the miracle of being alive. There are not many places in this universe that this is possible, and certainly not in this unique form of humanity. Let your breathing become slow and even and regular, relatively silent and smooth and silken. And as you do that, breathing in and breathing out, you'll notice that the tone of your thoughts, the tone of your thinking, your mind, becomes similar. It becomes slower and softer and more silent, more silken, smoother. And as soon as that happens, anything that you think of, you'll think of with more positivity, quite naturally, without trying. Then you become aware of the structure of your body, which is provided by your skeleton. The main strut of your structure is your spine, of course. And the spine operates optimally by being elongated rather than crumpled. Picture a benign being standing behind you, lifting the crown of your head up towards the ceiling, or if you're lying down, pulling it away from your heels to provide you a bit more length in the back of the neck. And also in the throat, in the front, your head is being lifted up, and that's giving your whole spine more length. This causes you to be more upright, which is dignity. That means literally being upright dignity. So you have a natural dignity about you now. You're starting to grow into the regal state that is your birthright. Now, the shoulders, which without realizing it, you're generally holding up a little bit towards the ears in a protective posture. Animals are afraid. It's part of being alive. Really function better when they drop. So just take a moment to let the shoulders do what they want to do, which is drop, rather than wasting energy holding them up. And as they drop, you get the sense of releasing the burden of your life story, the story that you tell yourself consistently, this narrative that we all run, that describes to you who you are, where you are, what all this is, how you're doing in relation to it. And of course it is only descriptions. Most of it spurious, all of it subjective. Some of it possibly coinciding with what really is going on, but most of it not, believe it or not. Yet we are completely entranced by the stories we tell ourselves and completely mistake them for reality, to the point when if somebody like me says that, what you're seeing as reality is only a story, it's not really what's going on, the first reaction is, oh, shut up, don't be stupid. We really believe the stories we tell ourselves, and that's not because we're stupid, to the contrary. It's because we're brilliant. We create brilliant stories, and we're really good at it, and that's why we believe them so much. But as you drop your shoulders, you can feel the weight of all that dropping away. And that enables you to broaden across the chest and the thoracic girdle. You just broaden out. You take up more space because you're allowed to. You don't have to narrow yourself. Be broad. And as you broaden your shoulders, it broadens your outlook. You become broader in your experience. To support all this, especially if you're sitting rather than lying, get a sense of your hips broadening as well. The sense of the sit bones sliding away from each other a little bit, because that broadens your base and then that supports you. And psycho-emotionally, the more broad you can keep your hips, therefore the more supported your torso is, the more stable will be your psycho-emotional state. As well as which, when the hips broaden, it encourages you to relax the pelvic girdle. This is very important because the pelvic area is where your generative force, your life force, originates. We would tend to experience that as animals in the sexual way primarily, hence procreation and hence how we keep the DNA moving through the generations, which in one sense is our function here. However, when this energy that is developed through the pelvic region is gently guided upwards, it expresses itself as, when it gets into the belly area, as willpower, as it moves up into the chest area as passion, as love, as compassion, as empathy, sympathy, caring, kindness, and so on, the human qualities. And as it moves up into the brain area, it brings consciousness, it supports your consciousness. The Taoist trick is to squeeze the qi, the jing it's called really when it's down in the pelvis, up through the core of the body, through the heart, into the brain, to enlighten you, to bring light into the brain, literally. To start with, though, there has to be relaxation in the pelvic area, and because we are relatively confused and complex about the whole sexual function, hence why religion generally tries to repress it and so on and so forth. We tend to constrict that area of ourselves. It's because it's powerful and we're unconsciously afraid of it and what it will do. As well as which, because that area is also where we eliminate waste from, and we don't like being messy, so there's a natural inhibition around that area because of that as well. However, constricting that area is not good for the health in any way at all. physically or energetically. And relaxing it is good for your health in every single way. So take this opportunity to allow the pelvic floor to completely let go, just for now. Let the buttocks relax, the whole area of the pelvis, just allow it to soften. And be gentle with yourself, because we are all scared of doing that. So be gentle and respectful with yourself, but gradually, slowly, just let it all soften down. And you'll notice as you do that, gingerly, bit by bit, breathing slowly all the while, the legs start to relax. The thighs, the hamstrings, the knee area, the calves, the shins, the feet, the toes start to soften as well. The animal starts to relax and trust where it is. Also, the belly starts to relax, and up the sides of the body, and the chest, and the shoulders behind that, and even your back, and the mid-back area, the low back area. And the shoulders start to soften as well. And as the shoulders soften, you'll feel the back of the neck softens. And when that softens, you notice that your skull starts to become more relaxed. And when that happens, the face relaxes. Now, if you focus for a moment on letting your cheeks get really, really relaxed, it's quite interesting when you do it to let go of any form of expression on the face at all. There's no energy being used to make an expression with the face. The muscles of the cheeks, around the eyes, the jaw, the chin, completely relaxed. It's rare, this, because in our interfacing with other people, there is fear, there's the need to signal with gesture and expression and so on. And this requires a lot of muscular effort without us realizing it. We forget to let that go. This is a beautiful opportunity to let all the expression fall off the face so that you become completely relaxed. And that softness then travels back down again, all the way through the body and down through the legs and the arms, so that you're feeling softer. And that's essentially what relaxation is softening all your muscles. You'll notice as you do this and as you keep breathing that the blood seems to be flowing more freely. The blood seems to be activated somehow. And the energy, the life force, is now free to move through you. And there's an ever so subtle glimpse of the sense of yourself as a primal being rather than as a cultivated being. Now, bearing in mind that the theatre of being you, the drama, the story, occurs in the front of you. The solar plexus area is in a state of conflict pretty much all of the time, dealing with the inflow of infinite amount of energy, of information, whether it's in the form of food or ideas or air pressure changes and light changes, sound, gravity shifts and all the rest of it, just being around people. It's constantly dealing with information, supporting the processing of information. So there's always a bit of tightness in the solar plexus. And this causes heat to rise up the front of the body. Heat rises. And the highest place it can get to is the front of the brain. And that makes the front of the brain overactive. And that's what causes us to create all these incredible movies in the head, these stories, the narrative. And all the conflicts we have with other people or with ourselves, the obstacles that we have to negotiate, or that we're describing to ourselves as obstacles that we have to negotiate, all the theatre of that, and how well are you doing in accordance with, in relation to it all? Are you going to achieve your goals or aren't you? Are you going to be somebody or aren't you? Are they going to love you or aren't they? All of these issues, all of this goes on in the front of you, all of it, including the fear of dying, and therefore the fear of living. All of it is in the front part of the body. And the stories are going on in the front part of the brain. It's where everybody stays habitually. That seems to be the modern human conditions, in the front of the body, in the front of the brain. But what we're going to do now is afford ourselves the deep luxury of occupying the rear part of ourselves instead. This is essentially the key to our evolution. the rear part of the brain is the 90% that we don't use. And when that opens up and is activated, that's when we attain to the psychic powers and the powers of channeling the chi to move objects without touching them, to cause events to shift according to our will, which is the essence of manifesting, assuming that's what we're doing, or at least we're partaking in that process. All the yogic siddhis, the powers, are attained by activating the rear part of the brain. And this is done very simply by occupying that part of the brain instead of occupying the forebrain. So that instead of being entranced by the narrative that you're holding in the front of your brain, allow yourself to sit in the back of the brain now instead. The way you do this is, well, one way is to picture your mind as a little Buddha with your beautiful face on it, with your gorgeous smiling eyes, walking to the back of the cave, which is the inside of your skull, and sitting down on a pile of very comfy cushions that have been arranged for you at the back of the cave, the rear of the skull, so that you can lean your back into the rear wall of the cave, the rear of the skull, and just sit there comfortably. And now you're sitting in the back of your skull. And if you like, you can see yourself gazing out through the mouth of the cave in the front there, which is roughly in the center of the forehead, just above the eyebrow line, into infinity. Not because it's clever to do that or there's anything specially gained by it, but that's where we are, so why not gaze into it, rather than being distracted by the thoughts which are usually your consciousness that arise in the forebrain. And the fascinating thing is that you'll notice as you sit in the back of the brain now, that narrative, that non-stop internal dialogue in the forebrain has apparently ceased. There's relative silence, hardly any noise coming off the forebrain, and this is quite miraculous. This is the essence of meditation. And here you sit. Equally as important, however, is to draw your physical presence backwards from the front of your body into the back of your body. Now, the front of the body is a noisy place. You've got all that emotional and psychological noise occurring there. Physically, it's noisy because of the peristaltic motion and the heartbeat, the lungs and everything. It's quite vulnerable. There's a lot of open spaces there to be attacked, and therefore it's relatively insecure. We could say weak, however many sit-ups you do. However, the back is, by comparison, strong and invulnerable. A little bit of space around the kidneys and the back of the neck that's slightly vulnerable, but generally the back is strong. The muscles running down either side of the spine are hugely strong. The spine itself is the main physical support of the whole body. And there's no noise in the back. There's nothing really going on there. And when you sit in the back, you become like that. You become still and strong and silent and relatively invulnerable. Therefore, secure. You feel safe. As you know from experience, when you sit in the front, you acquire the qualities of that environment and you become noisy and weak and vulnerable. To optimize on the experience of being a human right now, we start by coming into this space of strength and stillness and, it has to be said, power. So afford yourself that privilege now. It's your birthright. If you find it difficult to see yourself or feel yourself come into the back of you, there's a few devices that can be used. One that seems to resonate with people most is picture yourself breathing in white light through the whole of the front of your body and face simultaneously through the pores of the skin. So it's like you're breathing in a wall of white light from the front of you into the back of you, and light up the whole of the back of you, everywhere behind the side seams of your shirt or dress. And in that bright light in the back of you, there you dwell, beautifully lit, like the sun at midday. And then as you breathe out from there forwards through the front of you, so that that white wall of light goes out through the front of you, and its forward motion thrusts you back even more inside, just as when you're taking off in a plane. So as you breathe in, you come into your back, and as you breathe out, you come even more into your back. And as you sit back and sit back and sit back, and you feel comfortable more and more occupying the space in the back of you, in the back of the brain, you get the sensation that what you are, this presence that sits in the back now, is far larger than what will fit in the physical form. That the skin at the back of you and the back of your head is not really the limit to your being that you might have thought it was. You can feel it as if your real presence is so huge behind you that what shows of you in the front here is merely the tiniest tip of the hugest iceberg. But when I say iceberg, I don't mean it's cold, because it's neither hot nor cold. It's just presence. Now this presence, we could call it the background presence, is the same background presence that sits at the subatomic level in the unmanifest realm, and which supports the whole of the material realm. So all of this world of matter arises from the world of non-matter. This all arises from the subatomic realm, which to all intents and purposes is utterly invisible. And the consciousness that informs the subatomic realm is the presence that is sitting behind you now. And it's this that the Taoists call Tao. It's what in the West we would call God, but not in a sense of any religious way. It's just this presence that cannot be defined or described or named even. But we can call it something, so we call it Tao if you want. Doesn't matter. This presence that sits behind you now, this is you. And this is the spirit body. This is what goes on and has gone on and will go on forever, without limit. It exists behind time. It exists behind the world of matter. And it is eternal. And it's from here that derives all your power, your life force, the force that keeps you going, the force that drives your destiny. Now in the front of you there is your breastbone. And the breastbone is like the shield for your heart. And your heart is, in a metaphysical sense, the repository of all your beauty, the unique gorgeousness that is you, and is unlike anyone else's. And this is why the Tao manifested itself in your form. It was for this unique gift that only you can bring to be shared with everyone. That's what you're here for. And the gift is delivered by allowing the heart area, the center of the chest, to soften and open and give. Just allow the chi there, the energy to radiate freely. You might want to visualize your two hands gently pulling the two halves of your breastbone apart, like a pair of sliding doors, to reveal what you might want to see as, say, a cluster of precious love-coloured jewels, rubies and garnets and amethyst and rose quartz and so on. You might want to add a colour, a light, a kind of vapour, a light mist of rose gold, maybe a bit of violet, and a smell, a fragrance, something otherworldly and beautiful like frangipani and rose and jasmine, honeysuckle, and any note that really delights you and that will therefore delight others. And allow this chi, this heart chi, which is love, to radiate freely. And aside from the few hundred of us that are sitting here around the world in a circle, so to speak, there's all the other 8 billion odd people on the planet, all our sisters and brothers right now. And if we collectively just allow, and individually allow, this chi to roll and flow and radiate endlessly and generously, without limit, to touch absolutely everybody, without exception, even the people that you would normally want to exclude from your ambit, everybody without exception, we can be sure that this will, on a subtle but actual level, induce some form of healing trigger. You know, when you're walking down the street and you're feeling all messed up, and suddenly you get this feeling of like, oh, you know what, actually life's quite nice. You get that moment of light come to you in those dark patches. It's when kindly beings are doing things like we're doing right now. So sending this healing love out without limit to bathe the entire human family and beyond to all sentient beings on this planet and anywhere else without limit, we can be sure that we're adding to the healing impetus. And as well as that, it allows the same being sent by everyone else to be received by you. You're able to allow the universe, all sentient beings throughout the universe, in fact, to love you back. That's very important. So you're now sitting in the back of you without preference, merely observing the miracle of existence, as in fact you've always been doing behind all the noise, and allowing this love to flow from you and to you freely, without limit. Therefore, fully connected with the continuum, without any need to rely on personality or the ego or any aspect of the constructed self in the front. Here you are now transacting with all sentient beings from the depths of yourself, from the place of true power. It's not a personal power, it's a transpersonal power. This is the Tao meeting the Tao. And in this space, each of us perceives various obstacles before us. It could be that you've got money worries, or that you've got relationship worries, or that you feel lonely, or that you're having problems with your health or your mental health, or goodness knows what. Everybody has perceived obstacles in front of them. From this space, knowing that you're in the company of good fellows all around the world, picture your perceived obstacles as, say, a mountain range in front of you. And then see yourself from the back of you, not moving out of this empowered space, taking a run up and surprising even yourself, finding that you're able to, with one hop and a jump, fly right over the entire range in one leap and land deftly on the other side, just like a cat, without even jarring a single bone in your body. And now you find yourself on the other side of that mountain range of obstacles, having expended no effort whatsoever, no strain, no stress. Now here you are on the other side of all those obstacles. No matter what they were, you jumped right over them. You have been delivered. You've landed in the place that you want to manifest. You're there already. Now, here in your liberated state, again, take stock. Feel yourself in the back of you. Feel the innate excitement of being alive. Translate that into the love pouring out of your heart and being received into your heart. The physical body breathing slowly, the muscles relaxed, the skeletal structure broadened and lengthened. and you watching it all from the rear of the skull. Now, take a moment to think about what it is that you want to be feeling fully that you've not been feeling fully. Confidence, the belief in yourself, the sense of entitlement, the freedom, the feeling that you're using your time to express yourself authentically and fully without being a people pleaser, no longer doing things that you don't really want to be doing, in absolute harmony with all the people that are involved in your orbit, healthy, strong, feeling vibrant, and above all, fully enjoying being here, no longer running interference on that, no longer deferring your joy until you've achieved this or that, or until you can go out to that party on next Friday night or whatever it is, or until you can go on vacation next year or whatever it is. No longer needing to defer your fulfillment or joy, but embracing it, having it right now. And feel the innate smile that this elicits in you. You're free of all the obstacles now. You have attained to the next level of strength and power within yourself and everything that that entails. Feel the sense of an innate smile developing from the pelvic floor and moving up all the way through your body, lighting up your face and your eyes, and moving all the way past your ears and up above your head. It's such a big smile that it's become bigger than you even. And know that this smile is your symbol of you arriving in the place you wish to be. And in fact, you've already arrived there. You can feel it now. However, there is a linear time differential to deal with because, as we know, the material plane is far denser than the one we've just been playing in. And so things take time to work their way through and show themselves. There's no saying how long that is, and it doesn't actually matter anyway, because the whole thing's fun, and there's no need to defer our fun till the future, till anything's changed even. Things are changing anyway. So it behooves us now to resituate ourselves again where we are, where we find ourselves. However, we know what lies on the other side of the mountain there, and we know that we're already there. All we have to do is catch up with it. And as we think that, we realize that mountain range was an illusion anyway. There aren't actually any obstacles at all. These were purely imaginary, self-constructed. In fact, what there is a clear path through, with no one stopping it. We don't need anyone there to stop it. We don't have to create the bogeyman anymore. That's just a habit to make life more interesting. Well, life's a lot more interesting, in fact, without that. So here we all are, in a nutshell, sitting in our bags together like angels in human form, all the way around the planet, knowing that we've activated an entire process that will inevitably result in a beautiful flowering of reality for each of us. And as a result of that, we have an extra energy now. It may only be a glimpse of it, but I think you can feel it. A certain tingling joy in the heart area. Now, to make any magic work really well, the most powerful key there is having enacted the ritual to dedicate the fruits of it to everybody rather than to hog them for yourself. It's an act of giving away, and in that giving away, in that altruistic gesture, you can be absolutely sure that it will bounce back towards you and come back to you multiplied in force. So collectively right now, picturing ourselves as a circle of angels all the way around the planet, out in the ether, massive beings, holding hands. There's hundreds of us here, 23 countries worth of us, holding hands all the way around the planet, a family of angels, beautiful beings, radiating this excitement for life from our hearts, this benign healing excitement for being alive. And the radiation, this collective radiation of heart energy from all of us, is being transmitted to the planet that we see in our midst. You can see it there. It's all, we all know what it looks like, all round and blue and green and beige with white swirly clouds and all the rest. Knowing that down on the surface of that planet are 8 billion people, and goodness knows how many other sentient beings who are now receiving this power that we're sending them, knowing that this is going to trigger an entirely new scenario of a far finer quality in every respect for everyone here. Because we're the angels doing that, and that's what angels do, isn't it? We make healing happen for people. And while all that's going on, while all the angels are doing that, let yourself slide instantaneously back into the physical realm and find yourself in your body, in the back of your body, bearing witness to the front of your body, and notice that you're receiving something. Something's coming in, as if it's coming in through the crown of your head, the back of your head, especially at the back of the head and the back of the neck. It's as if it's like there's a circle of angels around the planet and they're beaming something into you, and it's filling up your heart with the most beautiful, glorious feeling of well-being and confidence and contentment. And give thanks for that as you receive the blessing that we have all collectively just in fact sent from the angelic realm. And in this human state, glorying in having the greatest gift that will ever be for anyone, just being here. Wriggle your fingers and wriggle your toes, wriggle your ears and wriggle your nose, flutter your eyes and bring yourself into the open-eyed state, because it's time for a little bit of question and answer game, which will be conducted by my esteemed producer and friend and business partner, the delightful Sue O'Cal. And that's what we're going to be doing now. And I must remember to put my headphones on so I hear this bit. I miss it all.
Hello. Well, while Doc is putting his headset on, a big welcome to everybody. We have people not only from the UK, but from the US, Uruguay, Antigua and Barbuda, South Africa, Thailand, Australia, Germany, Belgium, Uzbekistan, Slovenia, Switzerland, Mexico, Canada, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Ireland, Spain, Austria, Luxembourg, the United Arab Emirates, Netherlands, Namibia and France, which is brilliant. So welcome
It's
to
remarkable.
all. It is, isn't
What's
it?
wrong with everybody in Japan, China and New Zealand then? Where are all you lot?
They're coming next week.
Right.
Okay, so starting off here with a question from Joe. How do you resolve conflict with someone who has publicly abused and humiliated you now that the trust has gone?
Gosh. I don't know. I think anyone I've had that done to me in spades, and I don't think I've actually had to sort of just ignore them from then on. I think just stay away, do you have to resolve the conflict with them after they've done that to you? I don't know. Isn't that like the sign of like, that's it, buddy? we're out. Forget this one till next lifetime. I don't really know. I think that really, though, it starts off with at least you can resolve it within yourself so that you acknowledge the other as your teacher in some sense, who's brought you a painful lesson that's enabled you to identify yourself more clearly, to figure out where your edges are. And so that rather than maintain any kind of desire for revenge for them, you're gradually, slowly but surely forgiving them. You're not, you hold them to account for the transgression to your person, but you're no longer seeking to punish them for it. And it's not something you can make yourself do all of a sardine. You have to let it happen as a process, and it can take years sometimes. But eventually you realise that the desire for revenge on them is really only punishing yourself and draining your own energy away. So the sooner you can release that and let be, just let be. You don't wish them any harm, and in fact you wish them well, because you start to see the presence that's informing them rather than the personality that acted out. And you start to see that it's meant to be somehow in your theatre, in your story, to help your own development. So you wish the same for them, and you let it go. And then if you're required to encounter them, I think from that space you will do so far more with much less discomfort than were you still intent on punishing them for what they've done to you. That's for a start. And if you maintain the sitting in the back position with the heart open in the front, and whoever you're dealing with, you see them, the presence in the back of them, that seems to somehow conjure up a much more healthy dialogue than if you were caught in the front of you. And beyond that, I don't really have anything much cleverer to say about it. But really, I guess it would be nice if you didn't really have to deal with it anymore. That's what I think.
Sally is asking for some ideas, please. She says, a young colleague appears to be jealous of my perceived position and continues to make my life uncomfortable.
Oh, Sally, that's such a tricky one. It's that jealousy thing. It's horrible, isn't it? I mean, that's one of the things that constantly I'm always having to figure out for myself. How do we deal with that? I think that it comes down to when you can sit in your back and you can speak to the presence in the other, and with your heart open, realize that they're not who they seem to be. It seems to dispel the whole dynamic. I think the wishing well for the other as presence rather than as the personality is the best I've seemed to come up with so far for allaying that kind of evil eye, isn't it, the jealousy. Beyond that, I don't really have any tricks for it. Of course, there's the being able to kind of be with them in person and talk about it. And if you felt that you could, to say that, you know, the way it would be done most effectively would be, you start off by saying what you feel. I feel uncomfortable, for example, and a little bit anxious, whatever it is you feel. And then you say, because of what you think, because I think, as it seems to me, that you might be jealous of me. And I get this because of the way I watched you acting out. Of course, I might be wrong, but that's how I'm seeing it. And then the third part is, and what I would like is if we could discuss this and maybe dispel any illusions you might have about me and what's going on, so that we can collaborate and cooperate with each other rather than compete, because that way I think we'll both benefit more than if we're contesting with each other. But saying that, I don't know what the situation is for you, and I understand it's easy to say these things. When you're actually in it with all the emotions involved, it's often a lot harder. So it does come back to the initial process of internally seeing the apparent opponent as, in fact, your beloved family member, seeing the presence in the back of them, and somehow focusing on that rather than the way they're acting out in the front. And if your desire is for collaboration, you might find that they spontaneously come round to being like that with you without anything having to be said. But the key, of course, is getting yourself free internally. And I think I've also found that I think people being jealous is a mirror to the part of us that believes we're not entitled to have what we want. I think that's quite a big part of it. That the more you sit in the back and realise that as an expression of Tao, you're entitled to the full adventure, no limits, And it's not that you're taking anything away from anyone else, you're just living it fully yourself. The more we are clear about that, it seems that the less jealousy and unwarranted opposition we attract from others. That's so far been my experience personally anyway. I hope that helps you.
Bernard says, I practice conflict resolution and find the hardest thing to get to grips with is key people's unwillingness to resolve.
Yeah, Bernard. I mean, we hold on to our positions, don't we? Because we identify with them, and this is a symptom of us being stuck in the front of our bodies, where all of that constructed reality occurs. The more we're able to sit in the back of ourselves, the less conflicted we are within ourselves, and the more we do that, the more those around us seem obliged to spontaneously go into their own presence as well. What I've noticed, Bernard, is that when the more I'm able to be in the back of me as I'm transacting with other people, the more I've noticed people around me responding authentically, dropping that act that people generally have, or pretty much invariably have, dropping their positions or becoming a little bit more flexible about their positions. And then that opens up the energetic pathways for communication to occur. And I know this is a very generalized answer, but it's naturally a generalized question. I hope that that is somewhat useful for you. Hello?
Sorry, I had muted myself then in order to have a bit of a cough. Bear with me. Okay, this one is from Carol. What am I missing if I constantly have to bite my tongue when I'm with a very good friend?
I think you're missing an unbitten tongue to start with, and I think the compassion means that we have to allow our beloveds to go through their processes, and there's a point up to which we know it's better not to say something because it's not going to help. It's only going to cause a contrary reaction. But then there's a point beyond that where we know we're being untrue and that something must be said. Let me just put it like this, Carol. I think that what I've noticed that seems to work when you have a friend that you really feel you've got to talk to about something that's important for their benefit as well as yours, that seems impossible to talk about because they're momentarily stuck in a particular syndrome. I found that if I go into the back of me and I become aware in my mind, not when I'm with them, but in my mind, of them in the back of themselves, and in other words, I'm aware of them as a big presence rather than as the localized self. And I say to the Tao, which is the presence anyway, grant me an opportunity to spontaneously bring this up in conversation in a way that will be met with an openness rather than resistance, and without any effort or strain, let this conversation be had for the benefit of both of us and everyone involved. And then let it go. Picture yourself jumping over this phase and finding yourself on the other side where everything's in harmony again. And let that be the intention, in other words. And then if you just relax, you'll find that often I've found within 2 days, 3 days or whatever, it just happens. It may start with an argument. It may start with a bit of irritated conversation about something quite trivial that quite quickly develops into a conversation that is the one that's needed to be had. I've never actually known that one to fail. So it's not that you're missing anything. It's just that I think you might need to activate that request for the perfect opportunity to arise of itself.
We are 1 hour 20 minutes in, Stephen. Do you want some more questions?
Yes. I'd like 1.5 more questions, please.
Okay. Well, here's the first one, and that is from Janet. What if it's a close family member who is not willing to communicate? How much hurt does one take?
Well, Janet, if a close family member is not willing to communicate, there's nothing you can do about it, is there? You can't make someone communicate with you. All you can do is make your sign to them that you're willing to communicate, and then have the grace and strength to withdraw and leave the space for them to come to you. And you have to be able to let them come to you. You can't force it in any way at all. And this would be again triggered by being in the back of yourself, knowing yourself as the big presence rather than the small one that you've constructed and described to yourself. Being aware of their big presence rather than the shape that they've taken in your mind. And again, just giving the request to the Tao for that conversation to occur spontaneously of itself. Let go, carry on enjoying your life, and know that the main thing is that the person you love is being taken care of. Of course, that's the most important thing. And in time, whenever that is, that conversation will spontaneously occur. Probably the more you let go and take the pressure off it, the quicker that will happen. But I feel for you.
This last one is a double-barreled one from L.
I wanted half a one, not a whole, not a double one. Okay, all right, I'll go for it.
I can give you half of the double one if you like.
Yeah, that would work well. Well chosen.
Okay, the first half is, what is the key to transforming a conflicted, highly charged situation?
Well, did you say this is from Carol? Did you say?
L.
Oh, L. Hello, L. The key to transforming a highly charged, intense situation would be to look at where the charge and intensity is expressing itself in your own body. You'll find it will probably be somewhere around the upper diaphragm area, below the ribs on the liver, around the liver rather, on the right side usually, probably a little bit on the left where the spleen is as well. You'll probably find it's also affecting the kidney region and making that go a bit tight and contracted. You might find that that's causing a bit of tension and tightness in the chest as well. You might find that that is causing the throat to constrict a bit, and that is causing the face and the forehead to screw itself up a little bit. This would also possibly translate to tension around the groin and so on. So you stay on your back and you observe, use your proprioceptive sense to detect where the tension is accruing inside of you, where that intensity is in you. Then you use the power of command and breathing to dispel that tension from yourself and allow yourself to come back to a state of stillness by remaining in the back, breathing slowly and so on. And then in your mind, in meditation, picture the other in a similar state, knowing that we all have this ability, the capacity to be the big presence. See them as the big presence, the local self in irrelevance, and allow the love in the middle of your chest to radiate to the presence in them, not to the personality, not to the way that you're portraying them to yourselves, but to the big presence behind all of that, and with a wish for there to be healing and calm. And I find that that generally seems to work within a period of time, maybe 90 days, maybe 9 days, maybe 9 minutes, it's hard to say, but that would be the key to it, I'd say. You look at it in yourself, you release it in yourself, you form the intention for there to be healing between the two of you, and that generally will occur spontaneously of itself within a period of time, and that intensity will be dispelled. Thanks, Sue, for all the invigilating there, and thank you to everybody for being here. Truly bless you for this privilege of connecting with you all. I'm honoured that you would ask me these questions because, you know, I mean, who knows really how it all works, but I do know these principles and they do seem to be the way to approach things. It seems to have a good effect, and it's a privilege to pass it on to you. I don't know how adroitly I was able to conduct that meditation, but I did feel myself there was a definite sensation of the presence, collective presence there that we were all part of. And I would like to think that you felt some of that yourself, and from that will come something. We don't know what, but there'll be some beautiful effect from that for each of us. My intention, my wish for you is that it triggers a flow of beautiful surprises, because I don't know any better wish than that. Just a whole run of unexpected, synchronous opportunities occurring that delight you more and more as they go along, and that this energy will radiate to everybody on the planet bit by bit, so that it generates more peace, more kindness amongst us all over the next few days even. And as I believe we're beginning a sequence of 8 Sundays beginning next Sunday, by which time I will be properly revved up and prepared and in the mode. And I believe that these 8 sessions will carry us through into the new year with great puissance and elegance. And besides all that, I just want to say thank you and I love you. And it's beautiful being in the family with you all. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, the Tao. And thank you to GoToWebinar and the internet and all the clever people who make all this technology. But above all, thank you, you. All right. Bye-bye.